In the heart of Africa's largest economy, a new vision is unfolding. A vision built on collaboration. A vision powered by partnerships. This is the story of the 2025 Nigeria Public-Private Partnership Summit, where national ambition meets global opportunities. Convened by the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, Icrc, the summit brought together a powerful coalition: local champions, international partners, public sector leaders, and private investors. Spanning nations and industries, was a testament to the Icrc's convening power under the leadership of Dr. Jobson Osiodion Ewalefo. His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR provided steadfast support to the summit's success and was ably represented by His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima GCON, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who delivered the President's message of commitment to Nigeria's infrastructure transformation and PPP agenda.
We are not looking for investors to carry burdens, no. We are offering opportunities to create value. We seek long-term partners who are ready to help us bridge our infrastructure gap with purpose and precision. We have strengthened the Icrc and enhanced its capacity to regulate, superintend, and de-risk PPP transactions. We are determined to deliver infrastructure that is both sustainable and inclusive. And in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you have an ally who understands your language, who speaks the language of business, who grew up in that ecosystem. Today, let us chart a new path. Not just as government and investors, but as partners in nation building.
President Tinubu's vision was clear. Public-private partnerships are no longer optional. They are the driving force of Nigeria's renewed hope for inclusive growth and national prosperity. In his welcome address, Dr. Jobson Ewalefo shared Nigeria's bold PPP roadmap, anchored in transparency, efficiency, and strategic collaboration. The summit wasn't just about ideas, it was about proven projects, visible progress, and actionable partnerships. Global partners brought energy and urgency to the table, affirming their readiness to invest in Nigeria's future.
When it comes to the Icrc, for us in the Ministry of Interior, we've been very lucky with the understanding in terms of PPP. And of course, we know the fact that no country develops at this rate, not even in China, not in America, not anywhere in the world, without the private sector. It shows that this is a government that understands what it takes to take Nigeria out of the woods.
Mobilizing private capital is critical. Focusing on private capital through public-private participation and partnerships can bring this critical gap to a close.
Now more than ever, partnerships are not optional, they are essential. So at the African Development Bank, we have long recognized the pivotal role of infrastructure as a catalyst for inclusive growth, regional integration, and economic resilience. It is therefore critical to mobilize both the public and private sectors and the MDBs and DFIs like the African Development Bank and also the IFC to work together through well-structured, transparent, climate-resilient, and commercially viable PPPs.
Government has limited fiscal space and on its own is not in a position to finance the critical trade-enabling infrastructure that will spur inclusive and sustainable economic development. It is in this context that we're encouraged by the steps the federal government of Nigeria, under the leadership of President Tinubu, has undertaken and implemented. These bold market reforms have positioned the country well to withstand external shocks. It is such market-friendly policies that will make Nigeria an even more attractive investment destination.
From regional development banks to private capital leaders, the consensus was clear: Nigeria is ready. Day one set the tone, with high-level panels focused on leveraging PPPs for infrastructure, housing, aviation, and national competitiveness. The conversation explored how innovative financing, from pension funds to diaspora instruments, can de-risk investments and accelerate growth.
First and foremost, let me start with the Icrc to thank them for actually coming up with this particular team and a program like this. I think it has come at the best of times.
So even as government makes promises and commitments to addressing this, the government cannot really raise the funds to do it. So PPPs have become the key.
But I'm very happy today. This topic and the government that is in power. There's the political will to change the narrative. And for those who have been following the indices, they will see that definitely things are turning for the good. Well, I think Icrc came into being since 2005, but most of the impact has been in the last few years, particularly these 2 years. Moving into the future after these discussions, that things will be stretching out to make it a little bit more easy, both in terms of agencies that are superintending over some of these areas, and then the sectoral components that are needed to actually put together a complete structure.
Stakeholders management is more than 70% of PPP delivery. If you do not manage relevant stakeholders, then you cannot succeed, no matter how great the ideas are.
That's why collaborating with the private sector is not only optional, it becomes very much essential. And we have to know that housing is infrastructure, in the sense that we often think that infrastructure is roads, rail, power, but housing is just as critical as those. Currently, we have 10,112 housing units under construction nationwide. Out of these 10,112 housing units, only 3,500 units are government funded. The rest of over 6,600 are being delivered through the PPPs. And in fact, our PPP sites are even progressing faster than most of the budget-funded ones. This proves to you that value of smart and well-structured PPPs or partnerships can work. I think both the public, the government funding, and the private sector funding or under PPP is very essential to ensure that even the teachers, the nurses, and artisans, and everyday Nigerians, they have access to decent housing. We need both the PPPs and funding and one scale of delivery, and the other scale we need inclusivity and affordability for the government funding. For the 10,000 houses that we are doing now, 10,112 houses we are creating nothing less than 250,000 jobs, direct and indirect jobs. And they are earning incomes as high as 150,000 monthly. We have some bottlenecks, some of the bottlenecks that we have on the PPPs that we have. But we are able to overcome them due to the current DG of the Icrc.
Talking about the numbers of what the infrastructure gap is will not solve the problem. The real solution is rolling our sleeves and getting down to what the reality is, and that's one, project preparation. There's a whole lot of work being done, and I know Icrc is doing a lot of that in terms of advisory as well. By the way, DG, congratulations. I think you are distinguishing yourself, as we discussed about 9 years ago.
Infrastructure development has been an issue because it involves a lot of capital. So what we are doing presently, we are trying to see to develop bankable projects.
Reliable infrastructure is the backbone of any thriving economy. And ICRC has been doing a very good job. 65 years down the line, independence in 1960. And we have been having successive governments, and they also have been trying to build infrastructure for the nation. But in the last 2 years, it has been different because we have a new leadership in the country that thinks infrastructure, dreams infrastructure, and wants infrastructures that will cut across the state of the Federation.
These sessions reinforced the summit's central message: government must enable, but partnerships must lead. The summit spotlighted blended finance, capital markets, and asset-backed infrastructure models as the way forward.
More than 90% of the investment was in foreign currency, and it came from outside Nigeria. We must find a way to make most of the funding that goes into infrastructure to be in Naira.
The lifestyle of Nigerians demand subsistence cash flows. And until we begin to raise investment instruments that align with that lifestyle, Nigerians will continue to shy away from investing in infrastructure-related investment assets.
As international investors who should continue to believe in Nigeria's potential and future, and to see what happens to this country.
So when you talk about certain sectors, infrastructure sectors, certainly in the social infra space, so education, housing, healthcare, none of these projects, or 99% of these projects, are not going to be done on a purely privately financed basis. They're going to need some kind of viability gap funding, whether it's upfront capex reduction or ongoing subsidies.
Certainly, ESG is quite important for us at the African Development Bank. This is one area that we look at. We go beyond issues of commercial viability to look at these elements in our projects and make sure that these are well mainstreamed and factored into the PPP projects and infrastructure projects.
We still have to come back to the issue of policy, sanctity of contract, to give confidence to not just only the wholesale investors, but also to retail investors.
Even though we're going to finance, we're going to pay our concessions at a dollar rate, we must be able to generate the Naira, and therefore the regulation within the country must be able to afford us to pay back those concessions in Naira.
Nigeria's infrastructure future is bankable, and with the right structures, it is unstoppable. Day 2, live at the Congress Hall, Transcorp Hilton Hotel, Abuja. Day 2, zoomed in on the successful case studies from across Africa, reinforcing what's possible when governments partner boldly. From transport corridors to trade zones, the examples were clear. Nigeria's PPP journey is gaining global traction.
When I looked at the topic or the theme of the summit, Unlocking Nigeria's Potential, I was going to send a message to the DG that the answer is simple. Just find who locked it in the first place and collect the key from him. That might be an easy way.
If you take it from the government expenditure perspective, every country you goes in, we have said that the magnitude of government expenditure is always increasing,
the revenue is very stagnant. And then this brings demand on the budget to be higher to meet the existing demand of the infrastructural development. And the new paradigm shift is to go into what we call PPP arrangement.
I would say that one of the key takeaways, looking at the way that the PPP was structured and how the private sector came in, one of the key takeaways was really that when you scope a project properly, which I believe was one of the failures in the public sector's attempt, you have a model that becomes replicable. You can continue to take this template and implement it in the future.
Because I had an interaction with the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, and I'm telling you, years ago, I was marveled at the kind of resources they had in terms of intellectual property, the ability to decipher complex revenue models that were broken into future revenues.
People should always keep in mind that there's a P in that PPP that represents partnership. We are not competing.
Nigeria's transport revolution was front and center, led by visionary ministers, private concessionaires, and financiers.
We've eventually made some progress with transferring some of the assets to the private sector in terms of the HDMI road contracts that were concessioned to the private sector by the Ministry of Works with support from the Icrc.
Generally, roads have a very, very important impact in Nigeria. We really do not have a lot of transportation using rail, so we have to rely on the roads. And we've seen the impact especially on that project, on how it has affected the lives along that area. PPP roads are less than 10%. We have a huge amount of rural roads that have impact on agriculture, rural development, and so many things. We have competing sectors such as education, health. So the earlier we get the big roads onto a platform of PPP, the earlier for us to free resources to be able to put into these other sectors that you cannot necessarily commercialize. Having more conversations. Icrc is doing a wonderful job.
We have seen a clear line of sight, and that line of sight ultimately gets recompensed through, for example, the revenue stream that comes. So we provide the convenience, we provide the assets, we provide the safety, security, all of those wonderful things, and that money comes back. But if you cannot see that predictability and that ability to get that money back, why would you put the money in the first place? So it's a purely business thing. And again, without going into too much depth, since Monsieur Fati already said it publicly, I'll say it. This comes with a 15% IRR at that level. If I recall correctly, I think there's some upside sharing mechanisms if we outperform that. And that helps the investor to also want to go. And if it gets above a certain level, both sides win. So you are able to create a structure where it's a win-win, it's a balanced structure across the board.
The background to setting up the agency was specifically to separate the policymaker from the implementer. Prior to that, we used to be just part of the Department of Transport. I was the chief director in the Department of Transport with a huge number of people working in the Department of Transport or under the Chief Directorate of Roads. And what we found that there was always a conflict of interest. Although we had the roads board, the conflict was handled very badly. There was no independent review of the work that we did. And as part of the new dispensation in South Africa, because this happened all after 1994, we decided that we have to make sure that we reduce the conflicts, but we also provide services to the country as a whole. So each one had a strict mandate as to what you do. So we separated that, set up the National Roads Agency in terms of its own act.
Government needs, one, the object of this meeting is maximizing government through PPP. Government cannot do all the roads. The economically non-viable roads are what government should be moving their capital into. While after identifying the viable roads, let the private sector give the enabling environment, creating an agency that's independent, that the international community or the local community, the investing community can trust to deliver those assets once you hand it over to them.
But there is a strong case as well for competition in the provision of services, and that supports separation. And that probably explains why many countries where competition has been introduced into the rail, that the compromise has been partial separation, or what you call disintegration, where the infrastructure manager also runs services or runs operations in competition with other operators. But when vertical separation is complete, the main problem is to ensure that the monopoly infrastructure manager does not abuse its position. And this requires robust regulation.
And you look at the funding gap, which cannot be actually financed through public financing. We opted for PPP through HDMI, and the good story is about Akwanga, Lafia, Makodi Road. On the whole, we can say that comfortably that the Ministry of Works and of course the federal government of Nigeria will not be able to fund this road project, and therefore the PPP model is the best option for Nigerian roads.
What PPP does for me is that it maximizes the performance of our road infrastructure. It takes a couple of years to build an infrastructure. That's where value can be maximized. And any concessionaire would look at how to manage that infrastructure over the concession period.
The message was simple. PPP models are delivering faster, better, and more efficiently. The summit's energy conversations emphasize sustainability, reliability, and private-led investments.
One of the regulatory instruments issued by the Commission was the tariff order, whereby we make it mandatory for the distribution company to have a certain percentage equivalent of their current offtake as renewable energy within their franchise area. All those are being done in order to encourage investment and adoption of renewable energy in Nigeria.
We have the best mini-grid regulation in terms of commercial viability, technical requirement, and so on. What we just need to revise is to up that capacity limit of 1 megawatt to at least 50 megawatt. If you have already bought the houses, go and sell them and come quickly and start investing in the renewable energy. There's never better time to invest in the sector.
We now need to sit down, develop creative ways around how we will collaborate with each other, both from the government side as well as from the private sector side.
Being a reform agency, we look at what it is in the sector that we need to do or propose to government to do to ensure that private sector can come in and operate sustainably. And DG Icrc mentioned earlier that PPP is dynamic. So you have to keep coming back and having those conversations with private sector.
Mr. President has graciously enabled this by laying the right policy, regulatory and legislative foundations. I must commend the members of the National Assembly and the regulator for enforcing the Electricity Act 2023. That has been the game changer for us in the sector.
The regulation is there now. We have plans spanning years. What we look for now and into now, with this openness in the sector, that we are going to get partners, people that will come in with their fund to come and collaborate with the project that has been identified, to be able to fill the gap. These are what we are working upon.
And for capital to flow, you must get the alignment of interests and you must get the incentives properly put in place. When you have the right incentives, it creates the right culture.
From mini-grids to hydro giants, Nigeria's energy transformation is being powered by PPP success stories. As the summit concluded, one thing became clear. Nigeria's PPP journey is no longer a conversation. It is now a national movement.
So the communique of the 2025 Nigeria PPP Summit, convened by the Icrc, brought together policymakers, regulators, investors, financiers, development experts, and key stakeholders to engage in critical dialogue on the future of PPPs in Nigeria.
Our President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, who has given us every level of support that we required since the coming of Dr. Jobson Ewale as the DG. DG, we thank you for everything. We thank you for everything. Thank you for everything, yeah. We have to keep thanking God Almighty. We have to remain prayerful. We are not taking anything for granted, but sincerely, we'll keep doing our best.
We are all gathered here in support of the faith and belief we have in building Nigeria infrastructure through PPP. And for me, I must thank His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for providing the platform by engaging me to steer the ship at the Icrc. He believes in PPP, he's an expert in it, was one of the governors that started PPPs in this country in his time. He has led from the front. He has charged me to do the same. He has given me the assets. He has given me all what I need to ensure that we attract the needed private capital to build the Nigeria infrastructure. Concessionaires, partners, colleagues, and most importantly, the members of the press, the members of the diplomatic corps, and above all, the people that hold the pillar with which I stand, staffs and members of the Icrc. You deserve a round of applause.
From local players to global investors, the summit has shown that Nigeria is open, ready, and committed to building a prosperous tomorrow. The story doesn't end here. It begins now. Whether you're a policymaker, an investor, a development partner, or a proud Nigerian, you are part of this journey to success. So, step forward, join the partnership, build the future. Together, we can deliver the Nigeria of our dreams. A Nigeria where infrastructure connects, where power empowers, where growth uplifts everyone. The partnerships have started. The foundation is laid. Icrc is ready. The future is bright. The future is Nigeria.